And boy, we've got a big, exciting. Just making sure I'm not muted. We got a big, exciting hour.
I would have
here.
told you.
You would have told. I just like
absolutely.
talking to myself with no one else. Just me in a room by myself. Well, here tonight on the program, we're going to bring on our first ever live guest tonight. He is going to the Nord Summit later on next month, and he is in the board of the Abetalipoproteinemia ABL Foundation.
Abetalipoproteinemia.
Ooh, close. Let's find out how close you are. Man. Paul Biderman is on the show. Hey, Paul.
Paul.
Oh, let me unmute you. You got to unmute you. You've got to do it, not me.
Sorry about that. Hi, guys.
Hey, there he is.
How are you, man?
I'm good. How are you, Josh?
Not too bad, man. Thanks for being on the show with Barry and I.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Now, first off, did Josh say it right? Say it again, Josh.
Abetalipoproteinemia.
Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Thank you.
All right.
Good job.
Thank you.
Yes, so ABL, as we call it for short, is a very rare disease that I was born with in 1965 and diagnosed in 1966. And I started or helped to start a nonprofit foundation in 2019 called the ABL Plus Foundation.
Josh, get all your questions out of the way because I am well versed in ABL, but you might know nothing about it. So
So I was just browsing at the definition. I'm going to read it as well as you know, but for individuals out there that don't know the definition, an inherited disorder that impairs the normal absorption of fats and certain vitamins from the diet. Many of the signs and symptoms of lipoproteinemia result from a severe shortage, a deficiency of fat-soluble vitamins. There are approximately 100 to 120 cases. One of the first questions is I just took a look at that in general when Barry said I was going to, we were going to be introducing. How do you know that you have a shortage of those fat-soluble vitamins?
Well, it's a long process when you're a baby. Now, when you're a baby, it usually manifests in a very hard time handling any like baby formulas because they're all full of fat. And if you don't, what it is, you don't produce the chemical in your body that digests fat out of your diet. And so therefore the vitamins that are carried by the fat don't get absorbed either. And then later in life, you start manifesting other problems such as neuropathy, which is reduced sensation in your extremities, and blindness, of which I have both. And so that comes on later because you go all these years without having those vitamins in your diet.
Right. And a lot of people don't get this diagnosed until, once this happens as a baby, a lot of these doctors don't know what it is because it's such a rare disease, rare case that they try out a bunch of other stuff before they get to it. So it's how many people in the whole world, Paul, have ABL?
Well, he just read that it's at 100 to 120. We think now it's probably closer to 150, but it's hard to tell. We don't know all of them.
So 150 throughout the United States, or is that worldwide?
Worldwide.
Wow. So how initially does that come about that individuals that they go, because that seems to me that when you're born, right, that you have to go through a certain amount of tests. How do you know that doctors are skilled enough to be able to go, oh, you know what, this could quite possibly be a medical condition from Bazin and Kurzweil back in 1950 syndrome? You know, I mean, how does that occur? You know, how does that even begin to show on the radar?
Well, that's the difficult thing, and that is one of the goals of the ABL Plus Foundation, is to raise awareness in the medical community, so that when doctors are presented with children that have these symptoms and they can't figure out what's wrong, they look at every other test they can think of and they can't find a solution, then maybe they'll look at this. And the funny thing about ABL, compared to many rare and ultra rare diseases, is that doctors, when they're going through medical school, they actually hear about this illness because it is one of the oldest ones out there. So they're told about it in medical school. But it is so rare. What happens with any doctor with any rare illness is that when someone presents with these symptoms, they go, well, it's got to be something more common. It can't be that. That's too rare. So that's why, we are working as hard as we can to try and raise awareness. I think that's probably our number one goal, is to raise awareness in the patient community, because we get so many patients that don't know what they have and they're searching for answers. And in the medical community, to try and get doctors to say, hey, maybe I should look at this.
So when it comes to the degeneration of the retina of the eyes, resulting in that loss of vision, how long do you think it takes prior to testing that finally they say, hey, look, now we're dealing with the eyes, maybe this is something we should look at?
Well, okay, those types of problems don't come until much later in life. The telltale signs that they look for in babies and young children is, they call it failure to thrive. It's that no matter what they feed the kid can't handle it. They get sick on everything they feed them. And that's the biggest indicator for young children. The neuropathy and the vision problems, that all comes later in life. I just turned 58. I started really showing signs of blindness probably around my early 40s. So that's how long it took for me. And I still have some sight. I'm not completely blind, but I am, according to the state of California, blind, and I can't drive anymore. But yeah, so there are more obvious symptoms on a day-to-day basis that doctors should look for. And there are some very simple tests they can do. And that's the other message we're trying to get out, is it literally is a simple blood test that can point them in that direction. And the reason that is because people with ABL, when they look at their red blood cells under a microscope, they're called acanthocytosis. They look like spoked wheels, the blood cells. They don't look normal. And any doctor seeing that should know that's not normal, and should then start thinking about, okay, what illnesses would cause that? And this is one of them. So that's the awareness we're trying to get out. That's the battle we're fighting.
Well, then let's start simple. What is NORD, and what is NORD's role in the rare disease community?
NORD.
Before we get to NORD, I have some more ABL questions.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
We did talk to, we're about to release a podcast, Paul and I, and it's interviewing and talking to doctors and ABL patients. And Paul, why don't you tell us about one of the two that we've had so far?
The grandparents, or the one in her 20s?
What about the one in her 20s? Yeah.
So we have a patient who I actually met at National Institutes of Health about 12 years ago, when she was still a teenager. She is now in her 20s, and she went through, she still goes through problems. I mean, we call it a diagnostic journey, because I was actually lucky. My mom fought tooth and nail, thanks Mom, to get me diagnosed, because if it wasn't for her, I wouldn't be here. I was that sick at 6 months old. But a lot of kids don't get diagnosed until later. But the person Barry was asking for, she writes poetry and is going to have a book released. And She has some other problems. It's not unusual for rare disease patients to have other physical problems as well, like any person. It's still a human body. It's still, susceptible to other problems as well.
Yeah, so Josh, you're in the great state of Texas.
Yes, sir.
Where Mark Cuban is. I think he's there. And
oh yeah, is he donating to the cause?
No, he should though, because he's got that new company that is supposed to undersell all the medicine. You can get medicine cheaper with Mark Cuban's thing. So,
yeah.
So I'm just gonna tag this video with Mark Cuban's name on it, But Paul, tell Josh how many pills you have to take a day just to function.
Yeah. So the problem with ABL is that we have severe deficiencies in 3 major vitamins. Those are vitamins A, E, and K. So in order to try and combat that, they throw massive doses of these vitamins at us because they can't detect them. They can't detect vitamin E in my blood. So they don't know how much is actually absorbed. So vitamin E is the worst one. Those little 400 IU capsules that you can buy over the counter in the store.
Horse pills, aren't they?
Yeah, big ones.
They're not terrible.
Not bad, but you can almost assume, hey, they're not that big, but hey, I'll do 12 of them.
Okay, I do 36 of them a day.
Yeah, dude, that's a lot.
Wow.
And that's only because they go, well, that's about the most we think you can handle. They probably have me take more if they thought I could handle it.
Now, wait a second. Let me play devil's advocate. How do they know you can't handle it? Is it something that they've attempted and they've tried because you've said you've already taken so many? Or is it something that they've thrown a bottle at you and said, hey, chug them all. Let's test them. Let's see how your body reacts, and you didn't do well?
It's a little bit of both, and really it's about, well, 2 things. With vitamins, number one, vitamins in high doses, like any medication in a high dose, can be toxic. So that's a concern. But the main issue is there comes a point, like anything, where you just go, okay, it doesn't matter how much we throw at you, you're not going to absorb any more. And the problem with vitamin E is, since it's not absorbed into our blood, it ends up in our liver. And so so that's the only way they even know it's there. So yeah, there just comes a point where even overkill is overkill. So they don't think you can handle any more than that. So they don't think there's a point in trying to go higher than that.
And I didn't mean to be insulting at all. I'm just, as an individual that's a 2-time kidney transplant patient, I understand that, they attempt to give you a very large quantity of pills. And the number one discussion, and I'm putting that politely, I have with doctors is, well, you don't know my body like I know my body. You see the science of it, but I know what works best for me. And when I basically tell them to go F themselves, and I do what I do on my own, and my blood work comes out better than they could have imagined, they have no say to that. There's nothing they can say.
Yeah, no, you're right. And it's, they call it medical science. It's a science to a certain extent, but a lot of it's guesswork, and it's no slight to doctors that I know trying to do their best. And we have some amazing doctors on our foundation who are working very hard on these illnesses. But, in my personal case, I'm 58. Other than the blindness and the neuropathy and the vitamin deficiencies, I'm actually doing pretty good. And they don't have an explanation as to why I'm doing better than, the next guy with the same illness who does the same stuff and has the same diet. My diet's not the best. The problem with A beta is that you can't absorb fat out of your diet, so you can't eat fat because it makes you sick. And so I have to eat an almost non-fat diet. And yeah, I cheat sometimes because you know what? I like pizza. I don't care, and I know what that I'll have to deal with the consequences in a day or two. And I do that. But yeah, no, there's science to it, but there's also, yeah, you know your body better than anybody. And the problem with any rare disease like mine is that every time you see a new doctor, you've got to educate them because they don't know anything about it. And they'll tell you they don't know anything about it.
Of course. And you know what? Dude, I love hearing that because I can't tell you the first time, when I was really just coming off dialysis and stuff, they said, hey, no red sauce, no this, no that. And what was literally within the first 3 weeks I was doing everything they were saying not to do. And then I was coming back and they're like, hey, man, your blood works great. You must be doing exactly what I'm saying. And I would look
just
at them
nod your head and go, yep, okay,
yeah, sure. Hey, don't have any alcohol. And I was like, okay. And I do it anyway. Excuse me. Sorry about that. So
yeah, you're in the best of health, Josh. You could tell.
Yeah. Sorry, I was eating peanuts prior to that. But what I like hearing about that, dude, is that it proves everything I've always said. Is that doctors can only do so much. Sure. And we as people know exactly what our bodies can take and not take. And most doctors are forced, whether or not they believe it or not, to accept that. Like you could do what I do and basically freaking lie to them and say, yeah, man, I did all that nonsense. And then they
not only that, but doctors, especially in this country, in America, are so conditioned to worry about lawsuits that everything they do, they diagnose on the light side.
Of course.
Oh no, I'm not going to give you this dosage because you might get sick. I'll give you a lesser dosage.
Absolutely.
And so that's the other problem is that they underdiagnose because they're worried about lawsuits and stuff like that. So,
but at the same time, I used to know enough people that were on dialysis that were so incredibly scared of literally any sort of diagnosis that no matter what the doctor would tell them when they were strapped to the machine, they would go less than that and go, oh my God, I can't. Maybe my body won't. Oh my God. And they would overthink it. Right. And my theory was always, as I was strapped to the same machine, was like, well, your brain is your worst enemy. You're convincing yourself that you can't accomplish this or you can't accomplish that. Now, let me tell you this, man. I'm sure dialysis and kidney transplantation and everything else is nowhere near the same level as what you were dealing with. But I do enjoy hearing the fact that everything I always said, that you know your body better than any doctor, no matter how rare the disease, should help other individuals to be able to say, maybe I should trust my body. Maybe I should trust what I have felt every day and not let this overrun everything that I'm experiencing.
Yeah, you're pointing at your brain, and I was going to bring that up because, Paul, I've known you for a year, I think. Feels like forever.
Yes, thanks.
You're such a positive person. A guy like you could be such an angry, depressed, get off my lawn kind of guy, but you're just optimistic and happy, and every time I talk to you, you're in such a good mood. Do you think that plays a role into your health being good?
Great question.
Absolutely, and it's actually a comment I was going to follow up what Josh was just saying. There came a point in my life where I just had to say, you know what? I've got to enjoy my life. I've got to live my life the best I can live it. There are things that have become difficult for me. Driving is impossible now. I don't work. I don't work for money anyway. But I need to have a life. I'm not gonna, I went through so many horrible tests when I was a kid, and my mom knows this. She's watching tonight, I think. Um, and I made a decision when I became an adult, and I tell doctors this all the time. I told the doctor this the other day. If you want to do a test that's invasive, you're not going to do it on me, because unless it's an emergency, unless it's something that I absolutely need in order to stay alive. No, I'm not. I've been through it. I've done it. I'm not doing it anymore. So yeah, you have to realize that you have a life to live, regardless of the illness that you have, and regardless of what the doctors know or don't know, and what they tell you and what they give you. And I realize 100% that there are patients with A beta and the other two illnesses that come under our purview that are in much worse shape than I am. I know that. My heart goes out to them. It's why at 58 years old, I work so hard at this, because I don't want it. It breaks my heart to hear that there are still kids being born with this. And it's like, and the worst part about that is that a simple test of the parents could tell them that they might pass this on, but nobody tests for it because they don't know to test for it. So that's another issue. But yeah, no, it's too late for me to get a lot of help medically. I'm stable where I'm at. I'm okay. I'm getting by on a day-to-day basis. But my goal with the foundation is to bring awareness so that maybe a doctor in 6 months or a year or 2 years will have an infant in their care that they'll go, hey, maybe it's this. And that child won't have to go through the hell that I went through. We have a patient in New Zealand or Australia or New Zealand. I think he's in Australia, who's at risk of being deported because he has a rare illness, and he's a child, and it's absolutely deplorable. But the Australian government, their insurance won't cover the parents if the parents have a child who has a rare illness. And so the parents are not Australian, they're from another country. And I spoke to them recently, and they're at risk of being deported. And it's really horrible to me that goes on. But, on the other hand, we have a patient who I know who at sort of my suggestion recently went into a class full of medical students, and the instructor, who is one of our doctors on our boards, who teaches about lipid disorders. This is a lipid disorder. And he was teaching them about lipid disorders. And he goes, hey, look, we got a person here who has a lipid disorder. And she came in and she spoke to the class. And they were blown away that they actually met somebody and got to talk to somebody that had one of these illnesses, because they are so rare. And it's a difference between reading about it in a book or hearing about it in a lecture compared to actually meeting somebody and having to deal with them face to face. And that is the awareness we're trying to get out.
Hey, Paul, and let me just throw out a couple of listener comments real quick from Anne Marie Bacino. She wanted to say hi. She said, failure to thrive in an infant and mutation in the MTTP gene. She said, understand that most people dealing with this are first-time parents of infants dealing with an illness and need guidance from the medical profession, that they don't have experience to make their own decisions. Can you kind of clarify, add more to that, please?
Yeah, Anne Marie is wonderful. I spoke to her today on the phone. Her grandson has A beta, and she's right. That is, so we look at it from two different angles at the foundation. Number one is trying to educate the medical community to say, hey, maybe I should look at this illness. The other aspect of it, which Anne Marie mentioned, is that we get parents of children who are dumbfounded. They don't know what's going on. Their kid is sick. They don't know what to do. The doctors are telling them, we don't know what's wrong. We give up. My mother was literally told in 1965, sorry, there's nothing we can do for your son. Nothing. And that is a answer we are trying to stop from ever having to be told again. And so we are trying to reach out to the parents and caregivers as well. Because sometimes, yeah, we get parents and caregivers of children who are babies or toddlers. Other times we get them when they're teenagers or in their 20s. So we're trying to educate people in general about what these illnesses are. And they are out there. And there's probably more than we know about. And that's the problem, is that there's so few of us, but we don't know how many there really are.
So it's a matter of trying to find some sort of foundation or someone that has, and I hate to use the word clout, right, to be able to tell these doctors exactly what that is. I can only go back to how back in the early 70s that my parents learned what was going on with mine, and I went through what was called Eagle-Barrett syndrome. And at the time, it was less than 1 in 170,000 infants were born with this very rare disease. And initially, they would tell parents that your child will not survive past 6 years old. And that was that. That was all the science had to say. And as time went on, within that small gap of 6 years, they would go out and tell them, hey, if your child did live past this, there is a good chance that they would have kidney failure. And now it's, I think I read the recent stats for Eagle-Barrett syndrome. Belly syndrome was 1 in 250,000. But I'm interested in the fact that what you've said and that that Anne Marie had said, how can you tell these doctors to be, out of everything you've ever studied, how do you say, hey, by the way?
Yeah, I can answer that for Paul. I can, because this goes right into where
Barry knows. Yeah.
We're going to Nord. It's all about education.
Thank you, Barry.
And so, Paul, this is like Disneyland for rare diseases, you know? This is like Comic-Con for rare diseases, right? Tell us about Nord, and it's coming up in October. Tell us about this summit that you're going to.
Yeah, NORD is the National Organization of Rare Disorders. I'm trying to, I wish I need to watch the video from last year. I believe they said there's something like 7,000 rare disorders in the world, and 98% of them have no treatment or cure. Ours has a treatment. It's the vitamins. But so they have this annual meeting called the NORD Summit, which is coming up in October in Washington, D.C., if I can speak clearly. And they bring together people from rare disease foundations such as ours, and pharmaceutical companies and policymakers. And they bring us all together in this thing. And okay, there's lectures. Yeah, we sit there and watch some lectures, some of which are very interesting. I'm sure Nord would want me to say they're all fabulously interesting, and they are. But there's also networking opportunities to network with other foundations like mine, and to network with pharmaceutical companies and say, hey, what can you do for us? What can we do for you? We are so new in the ABL Plus Foundation that when I went to the summit last year, I had no idea what to expect. I had never been to anything like this in my life. I didn't know what it was all about, but I went. And my takeaway from it was, wow, we have a lot of work to do. We are so behind in where we should be at this point. We have a ton of work to do. And here it is now, fast forward a year later, and we still have a ton of work to do. We've made strides. To answer one question that Josh brought up, though, about how do you tell these doctors to look for these illnesses, A, it's a simple blood test can point them in that direction, like I mentioned earlier. B, there's been a lot of documentation written about it in medical journals, including our doctors from the foundation have written letters about each of the and articles about each of the vitamins that A beta patients are required to take, and those are published, and patients or their families can get those documents and give them to the doctors. But really, the other biggest battle that we haven't mentioned yet, and I know we're here to talk about NORD Summit, and I'll get back to it in a minute, is here in America, vitamins are not considered medication. And so how do I get 36 pills a day of vitamin E? I can't afford that. I'm very lucky in that they are provided to me through a source, but we have patients who spend thousands of dollars a month on vitamins. And it's because they go to their insurance companies, and their insurance companies say, oh, no, that's a supplement. That's a dietary supplement. You don't need that. And they won't cover it. And that's our other battle, is to try and get the insurance companies and the pharmaceutical companies to realize that these vitamins are as required a medication for patients with these illnesses as insulin for a diabetic or heart medication for a heart patient or anything else. It keeps us alive just like any of the others. And that's the other battle.
But I think that's another great reason why you have these summits, why you can be able to sit in front of individuals that can hear exactly what is required for individuals such as yourself and the woman that commented early, for, to be able to understand this is what works. This is what is needed. It's incredibly rare. But this is what we do, which brings me more to the NORD thing. What's NORD's role in the rare disease community?
I think NORD would say that they have multiple roles. That they advocate for patients and caregivers, of course. They push research through grants and through putting, people in front of people. They constantly tell us about what are called FDA listening panels, where the FDA will have people come in and tell them about, what they need, and then they can decide on whether or not a policy is needed. They push policy. They push the federal government towards getting policies done. The NORD Summit is actually called the NORD Orphan Product Summit. And what an orphan product is, which I didn't even know what that term meant. An orphan product is a product that is developed, usually a drug, but it could also be a medical device or something like that is developed for a very small segment of the population. I think it's like less than 1%, something like that. And so they call it an orphan drug or an orphan product. And so that's the other goal of the summit, is to put the companies in front of us that develop these drugs and develop these products, and we can tell them, hey, can you, this is what we need. Maybe you can work towards that.
Who gets to attend this summit?
So my understanding of it is that they invite member foundations such as ours. They invite students. I think it's medical students that get to go, and they invite these companies and CEOs and guys like that, pharmaceutical reps, people like that. As far as foundations who are members of NORD, like we are, they actually provide what they call a scholarship. They're paying for me to go. They're paying for me to come from California to be there. They pay for the hotel. They pay for the flights, everything. So it's a great opportunity for me personally, because I don't have the money to do that kind of thing on my own. So that's wonderful. And so, that is what they would say they do. I think is that they advocate in a number of different directions to try and I think the ultimate goal, of course, would be to eradicate rare diseases.
Of course. Does it require any sort of membership, or is the ABL Foundation? If so, is the ABL Plus Foundation a member? Anything like that, or
we are
on that?
Yeah, we are. So NORD does have a membership system. If you go to the website, they list all the different rare disease foundations that are members of NORD. We were founded in 2018 or 19, and we were admitted into NORD in 2020, which was one of the fastest ever admitted into NORD. And it's because we're so rare, I think, that they realize that, hey, we need to bring these people into the fold. So, yeah. And now you don't have to be a member to go to the summit, but generally, yes.
Okay. And so Josh, I think you lived in DC. Josh lived in DC before. If I'm not mistaken, he was there in radio. Yeah. And Paul, this is your second time over there.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of a vacation, right? Do you feel like you're on vacation when you're over there, or is it all just like, oh, gotta leave my name tag on everywhere I go?
It's a little bit of both. Now, the way the summit works is that so the summit is actually Monday and Tuesday, October 16th and 17th this year. But anyone who receives these scholarships, as they call them, they have to be there Sunday night for a meeting. And so the only way I can get from California to be there at 4 o'clock on Sunday is to go Saturday night. So yeah, I get to do a little bit of sightseeing, not a whole lot. Last year, took the subway to Bethesda, Maryland, and had some Maryland crab.
Nice.
It's not much, but then once the summit starts, it's amazing. Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Once the summit starts, it's all business, and it's all 8-hour days, and it's long
What did
days.
you learn last year? What was your takeaways last year? Do you remember?
The biggest thing, like I said, was that we had so much work that I didn't even know we had to do. Mm-hmm. I met people from foundations that had they have patient registries. I don't know what a patient registry is. I've never heard of a patient registry. It's a database of the patients that have an illness that doctors can go to and say, okay, I want to do a research study on this illness. I need people who fit this criteria, that criteria, and this criteria. Do you have anybody who has who fits all these requirements? Without a registry, we can't answer that. So we learned we need to start a registry, and yeah, that was the biggest thing though, was that I thought going into it that we had done a lot. We had gotten these letters written and about the vitamins, and I thought we had done pretty good. And then I realized once I was there that no, there's foundations for very rare diseases that are much bigger than us, that have done a lot more work than us. And that's where we need to be. And that's where we're going, slowly but surely.
But that's okay though, right? Like that you almost need that as a motivation to be able to go, okay, I got it now. I'm going to double my efforts the next time around. And then you do that so you can kind of, you be that individual that steps up because you're prepared. But now the time has gone on. What I don't want to hear is you go, hey, I didn't have a good place to stay or a good strip club or a good experience for the city. I was totally prepared for my job, right? But, experiencing life, I wasn't prepared for that. In this point, yeah, you need that first one, right? You need that good chin check to go, oh my God, there is a lot of other very rare diseases I didn't even think of before. Before I spoke to you today, did you ever hear of Eagle-Barrett syndrome?
No.
I mean, and this is our first time having a conversation. And I can guarantee you now, there isn't anyone on the Congress floor helping my thing, anything that I did, which has me think a lot more. But we're talking about you this time. My overall thought, though, right, is that every time you research what you're trying to do, not only to better yourself, but better the very few individuals that are dealing with it, that you're going to be not only prepared, but beyond prepared to a point that no matter who has a question for you, you're going to be able to answer it. So I I'd like hearing that every time you go into it, you're ready, man. You're ready for a battle. That's great, man. I like it.
Let me ask you. Are you going to speak at all? Are they going to have you get up there and say something? Say a few words?
No, I wouldn't mind it. It wasn't an opportunity that was presented to me. I wouldn't mind talking to Nord about that, and maybe next year or in a future year. But no, I'm not going to speak. But yeah, I go into it this year with a whole different outlook and a whole different attitude, because now I'm like, okay, now I know what we need. Who's going to be there that can help us get that? Because last year I didn't know. I didn't know what to do or who to talk to or anything. And I don't know who to talk to right now, but I'm going to try and find out.
So do you have somebody that, do you have somebody that can help you out with that? An individual with some sort of doctorate degree, or somebody that, you have embraced with everything you're dealing with, that can help do more research than anything you've ever thought of, though? I mean, I just think of, individuals, I'll just throw this out. Let's say autism, right? Mm-hmm. There are so many individuals that, you can go parents dealing with it. You can go doctors that are trying to understand it. Yours is way, way less than that. Do you have somebody that can be able to be your Iron Man or woman that can say, hey, I'm going to help you out with this, Paul. I've done this amount of research. Let me take it from here and help you achieve this kind of goal. What to help you get something out of this summit?
Yes, so we do. We have some doctors. All of our doctors on our board are amazing, and they're all doing work in this field in different areas. And I can go to them and say, I don't know what to look for, who to talk to, or whatever, and they'll hook me up with people and say, hey, go find this person while you're at the summit and talk to them. And actually, we're having a board meeting before the summit. And that's one thing that we need to discuss is, okay, who can I talk to while I'm there? Who do we know that's going to be there? And I actually, after last year, I came back and I had discussions with other foundations, some of which had been at the summit, some of which had not, that our doctors put me in touch with, because I had questions. I had so much questions about, what do we do? Where are we at? Well, how do we get to where we want to be? And these people had foundations that could answer some of those questions and give me guidance. And I feel like we've come a long way in the last year. We had our first ever international symposium over Zoom back in, I think it was February or March, where we got some patient stories, and then we had a panel of doctors who discussed everything about A-beta and the other two illnesses and what they are and how they're treated and how they're diagnosed and all this stuff. And those videos are on our YouTube channel. That's all that's on our YouTube right now. That needs to change, but that's something we never would have considered doing before a year ago. So yeah, we're making strides, and yes, I do feel like I have support. I feel like we need more. We always need more. We always need more support from our community. We always need more support from our doctors, who obviously are very busy. But one day at a time, we'll do what we can. This morning, there was a Nord webinar on fundraising, which is something we had not done. And so I went to that, and Anne Marie went to that this morning, and we listened in on that. And I think we agreed after the fact that, okay, that was all good information, but that was point Y. We're still on point B. So we're not even close to being able to do what they're doing, but it was good to hear how they do it. So that's the kind of stuff that we need to do.
But that's a good point, though. You almost need to see stuff like that from individuals that have taken it past the ABC levels. You need to see things like that. So you, not only yourself, but an individual like Anne Marie that seems very vocal and very into it. to be able to
Is she
say.
giving you a hard time?
Yeah, no, I'm just happy someone actually commented. To be quite honest with you,
Yeah.
someone's actually interacting, and she was
Anne
very
Marie's
vocal.
She's a great person.
Which is great. So no, I hope you can develop more out of that.
No, I hope so too. I hope I come back this year and go, okay, well, I learned how to do this, and I'm in contact now with that company and this organization, and maybe we can kick some stuff off now and get some more things in the works. We're building a new website as I speak right now, and fundraising is great, but as Anne Marie and I talked about today, we got to define what it is we're raising funds for. We don't even know what we want to raise money for, so we got to do that. We got to define that, and this will all help. And I'll come back this year with more information and having learned more, and God willing, I'll maybe go next year and be in an even better place and learn more again. And one day at a time. That's I have to keep telling myself that this foundation is only 3 years old, and we were founded literally months before COVID, when the world stopped for 9 months. I didn't hear from the doctors on our board for 9 months. I thought it was dead. So, they were too busy. And so the fact that we're still here and we're still advocating for our community, which is a very small community, but it's a community that has needs. And we're global. We have people in Israel. We have people in South America. We have people in England. We have people in Canada. We have people all over the world. There's only very few of us in this country that have it. I think most of the people that have it, there are clusters of them. There's a big cluster in Israel. It's funny too, because they originally, when I was younger, they used to think it was a Jewish disease.
Ooh. And
then they figured out, oh no, there's non-Jews that have it too. So, yeah, they used to think that it was only a Jewish illness.
Well, that's interesting. I mean, how did that initially start to where it was predominantly Jews that, were very vocal about it? I
don't think it's about being vocal. I think it's just about being diagnosed. I think there's a better than good chance. I'd say there's a certainty that there have been A beta patients probably for hundreds, if not thousands of years, but they never got diagnosed, because you mentioned Bass and Cornswag, which was the original name of the illness, named after the two doctors who originally diagnosed it. That was the 1950s. So what happened? You can't tell me nobody before the 1950s had it. They just were never diagnosed. And we still get people who are not diagnosed. And that's the thing that pisses me off. We have a gentleman who recently joined our community who's in his 20s, and he wasn't diagnosed until he was 18. And it's how he even survived that long with A beta is crazy, but he did. And how do you go 18 years and nobody diagnosed it? And the only way it was diagnosed was his mom worked she's not a phlebotomist, but she works in a lab or something like that. And she said to him one day, they knew he had problems. They knew he had this, something was wrong all these years, but they didn't know what. And she said to him one day, hey, do you want to see your blood under a microscope? And he said, yeah. And this goes back to what I said earlier. They looked under the microscope, and the woman knew enough to go, those red blood cells don't look right. There's something wrong with them. And they went back to their doctors and they pointed it out, and that led to the diagnosis.
I also heard, according to Ann Bacina, who just posted, she also said African due to consanguineous relations.
What is that word?
Consanguineous? I don't know. I'm trying, man.
That's a good word.
Come on, I like that. Mel just posted, Paul has been a real champion for people and caregivers, using his experience, giving his experience a voice to encourage others to step up and really raise awareness, which is why we're really bringing up the NORD and everything going on with that. And said related individuals is really what that's all about.
I see.
That's
people being together. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Of course.
You know, it's really amazing about related individuals. So if you know anything about genetic disorders, both parents have to have the gene, and they both have to pass it on. So when two parents with a defective gene, the gene in this case is called the NTTP gene, if they have the defective NTTP gene and they have a child, there's still only a 1 in 4 chance that they'll pass it on because both parents have to pass on the gene. And yet we have cases. We have a family in Hawaii that I heard of. I think there's 7 kids with it, and they go, that's statistically impossible. It's not possible for a family to be born with that many children that have it, but they are. They're there, and I think there's something like that in Israel as well. So yeah, as far as relations go, yeah, it's genetics is a crazy thing. Nobody knows what to make of it yet. You know, there's discussions. We get a lot of questions these days about gene therapy. Who will gene therapy help? Maybe someday. I asked our doctors that recently, and they said the problem with A beta and these other 2 illnesses is, and by the way, I should get their names out there. The other 2 are called familial hypobatalipoproteinemia and chylomicron retention disorder, which I believe CMRD has like 10 people that have it. It's that rare. But the answer about genetic gene therapy is that in order for gene therapy to work, you have to be able to get the synthesized or the corrected genes into the person's body so that the body then goes, oh, this is what it should look like, and starts producing cells that are identical to the gene therapy. The problem with a gastrointestinal illness like this is that the cycle of producing these enzymes, as they're called, is so fast that gene therapy wouldn't work, is what I was told. Because we can't get it into the body fast enough for the body to recognize, hey, I got to change the way these cells are being made and make new ones that are corrected. So gene therapy, maybe in the future, gene therapy might help. I know one of the doctors told us recently that National Institutes of Health spent thousands of hours on trying to use gene therapy on GI rare diseases and just couldn't. It just didn't work because of that.
Well, there's a lot more science to go down. It sounds like a superheroes festival that you're going to.
A little bit.
All these rare. You should do a contest and find the rarest person at Nord, like 1 out of 1,000,000.
You know, I felt like I was the rarest when I went, but I don't know.
Come on, Barry, I mean, give it to him. Let him have the first year. Come on, dude.
No, Paul, I want you to meet people. I want you to have meet some friends on the East Coast or wherever they're coming in from, and you know, come away with this with more intel than you did last time. Now you know what to expect. You know, the first year is always the weirdest one because you know it's like, oh, I got to go to like building 28. And it's like, where am I going? Who am I? You know, so this time I think you know what's up, and you probably have some allies at this point. So you'll come back with a lot of good knowledge.
Thankfully, it's all in one hotel. But yeah, it's it was overwhelming last year. I'll tell you that. If you guys will have me, I would love to come on after the summit and tell you what went on, and
of course,
and tell you what people I beat up, and you know, and see what happens.
I want to know all. Yeah, of course. I want to know all the ABL plus groupies. I want to know all of it.
Groupies.
Yeah.
Well, Anne Marie is a groupie apparently. So
Anne Marie, really? Okay, she's very knowledgeable. Man. We'd love to have you on. We'd love to know more. Barry introduced this to me about a week ago. I've been doing a lot of research. I find it incredibly fascinating. So whatever you can have for us, yes, we'd love to have you back on the show and learn more.
I appreciate that. And I want to say, and Josh, thank you very much for the research that you've done and your very wonderful questions. But I especially want to say thank you to Barry, because before I met Barry, there was no media related to ABL. We had nothing. And Barry has done amazing working with me to try and get this awareness out there and these podcasts made and this show. And thank you, Barry. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Paul. I couldn't do this without you. And, what good is media if it doesn't do good for somebody?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So, thanks for coming on, Paul. You have an open door policy anytime there's breaking news in the world of rare diseases and sports. Is there still hockey going on right now? What's the team that you're going for right now?
Believe it or not, the LA Kings are in Australia right now playing exhibition games tomorrow and Saturday against the Arizona Coyotes. What the heck they're doing down there, I don't know. Get them back to the United States.
Trying to stay cool, man. Trying to stay cool.
But yes, NHL season opens in the first week in October, and I can't wait. As I always say, the best thing about football season starting is that means hockey season's around the corner.
That's great. I mean, the Angels keep wanting, or the Ducks, the Anaheim Ducks, keep sending me email blasts. I went to one game, and now they're emailing me everything. Hey, we've got a new collector's mug. Please come back to a game.
Ain't nobody want to go to that.
No,
nobody.
I've been to one Ducks game as well. It was against the Kings, of course. It was in the 90s when Gretzky was still playing for the Kings, and I walked out back then. I still smoked, and I walked out of the arena during one of the intermissions, and I'm standing there having a cigarette, and these two Duck fans were standing next to me, and that was when they were called the Mighty Ducks of Anaheim, and one of them said to the other, I swear to God, he goes, that Gretzky guy's pretty good. Really? You just figured that out? Come on. That Gretzky guy's pretty good. Okay, then.
I got to go with Anne Marie posting here. She says, "Go New Jersey Devils." Thank you. We appreciate all you gentlemen for doing you're doing for the ABL community. New Jersey Devils, not a bad hockey team. It depends.
I'm actually from New York originally, so
yeah. So I get you're like, we don't know.
Hey, I have no affiliation. If they're good, I'm in.
I'll watch them. I'll watch them.
Ball in the hole.
The ball in the holes. You see,
a real hockey fan here.
There you go. That ought to answer that question right there, Paul. Yeah. Let's get the whole. Yeah, let's get some strikes in hockey.
No, I know that.
I'll have to educate Barry on hockey. I see. Okay, all right, that's fine.
We'll ask you about that too. That's no problem.
All right.
I'm always happy to talk about the LA Kings.
All right, nice.
Thanks, Paul, for being on. This is Night Sounds.
Thanks, guys.